everybody, and welcome to AI People. Today, we're talking to Ramin Mirza, who has most recently been Chief Customer Officer at Aleph Alpha, which was one of Europe's big bets in the foundational model market. Greetings, Ramin.
Hey, greetings. Great to be here.
So we always kick things off asking for some predictions about the AI industry as a whole. So the first one is, how do you see humans and AI collaborating with regard to work in 5 years' time and in 15 years' time?
Okay. So I would say in 5 years' time, humans got to use to work and collaborate with AI. They are not afraid of AI anymore, but rather see it as a companion somehow. In 15 years, probably we are the companions, and we do just the magic emotional stuff, while everything else will be done by AI and machines run by AI.
So do you think, say, that 15-year time frame, like that AI will be setting the agenda and we'll just be kind of playing our role in that, or whatever that might be?
Yeah, I think the whole right now when we talk about AI, we a lot talk about, I would say, the software side. The white collar work, I call this now. I guess in 15 years, the white collar work is already revolutionized, and we are talking about the blue collar work. So look into the humanoid robotics and so on. I think this will merge together, which means a lot of work will be done by robots run by AI inside of the robots, and we as humans rather orchestrate and focus in particular on the emotional side, the emotional intelligence, because I believe this is something which AI will not be able to cover even in 15 years.
Yeah, okay. And where do you think we are on the AGI timeline? Is it something we're getting close to, or still a long way away?
Honestly, I believe it's a long way. Because I also believe that how do we define AGI really is always stretched more and more. Maybe 50 years ago, someone would have called something like ChatGPT AGI already. It thinks
sure.
of against the answers. So I think we are really far away, and it's not about when do we have this state. It's rather about how do we leverage technology for the best of the society.
Okay, and leading on to the next question, like what do you see AI doing in terms of reshaping the global economy? Do you think we're going to see more wealth inequality, or we're going to narrow gaps in opportunity?
Well, I would love to say the whole world would be a much better place, wealth for everybody and so on. But if you look into the history, at least, every technological revolution led to more productivity, more efficiency, higher wealth overall. But still, I would say the scissor always went up. So it was more like one side, the people who leverage the technology are on the winner side, and the ones who, for whatever reasons, could not or did not leverage the technology will have tough times. And I believe, unfortunately, this will be the same here with the whole AI topic. So we need to make sure that ideally this technology is leveraged broadly as possible, that it helps really for the whole world, not only for the people who have maybe access, for example.
Yeah, okay. So before we jump into kind of the podcast proper, could you just introduce yourself, kind of talk us through your background from SAP to Google to the world of foundational models?
Yes, sure. So I'm almost 41 years old. My whole life, I focus on go-to-market topics, being it sales, channel management, marketing. How do you commercialize? How do you translate basically technology into business value? I always say I'm basically a translator, technology into business value. That's what I did my whole life. I started my career at IBM and moved then to SAP, where I was quite a long time. Different roles, different countries, be it in the Middle East, in Western Europe, and the US. So I focus also a lot about what's the difference between the culture in the US and Western European culture when it comes to go-to-market. So the big difference there. And for 2 years ago, I joined Aleph Alpha, an AI startup, where I really got deep into the whole AI topic, foundational model topic, and ramped up the whole go-to-market there from scratch.
And how did you find going from obviously like a huge beast of SAP and Google to building something from scratch? I mean, I guess that's a very different cultural environment, if nothing else.
It is, and I would say the grass is not greener wherever you look at, right? I would say the benefits of a startup is really that you can act fast, you can decide fast, and you have really less politics. That's the good side. I would say the good side on big tech rather is there are so many existing procedures that you can really rely on that, and you can just scale and build on that. Which on the startup side, you just don't have this. You have to think everything from scratch, and now comes even the AI dimension. The AI domain, I would say, is moving so fast. So if you decide today to go to the left side, even on the go-to-market commercial way, it might happen that tomorrow you have to go to the right side. So in that case, startups have much better advantage, because for big techs like Google, SAP, Microsoft, it's definitely more difficult to just change the direction of the ship.
Mm-hmm. And did you find, being so early in, at that startup, that it was presenting you with challenges that you never even expected when you joined? Were you having to kind of learn brand new skills, like what whilst trying to build the ship?
Yeah, I mean, again, because I started my career at IBM, then I moved to SAP and then to Google. So I was always used to existing procedures, existing departments. So whenever I didn't know how to manage something, I knew at least who to ask, because there was always someone who was responsible for a specific task.
Yeah.
In a startup, you typically don't have this. For example, I started to look at the website and say, oh, I found a grammar issue there on the website. We need to change the wording there. And then, okay, who is responsible for the website? Basically, everybody said, well, everybody and nobody, right?
Right. Yeah.
So suddenly, and that's a minor example, but we have this in a lot of areas. Look into the go-to-market side. How do you price a product, right? So there it starts already, right? You never ask in big techs. You usually don't ask about how do you price a product, because the product department just gives it to you. And on the sales side, you just think about how do you position this. But in a startup, in the AI domain, you have to think about how do you price a product, and how do you bring this to the market, and how do you win customers? And that's a much broader experience I could gain here.
Yeah. Okay. So if we think about the foundational model landscape, like how do you see that landscape as it is today? What are the dynamics that you think drive differentiation?
I would say it's very interesting how this evolved. I think you have obviously the really big players who play the data crawl game. Give me all type of data, and I will just optimize and increase and prepare much better foundational models. You see now, and you see this with GPT-5 already. You see this with Llama 4 already. That you are getting into a peak somehow, right? So where do you get now better data? Where do you get domain-specific data? Because this is what really businesses want, to be honest. They don't want only summarize my email, but they rather want, do you understand how I produce a car? Do you understand how financial services work, and so on? And the foundation models are okay-ish, because there is some data, but if you look into the data landscape, there's much broader data about everything else, but not the domain specifics, and even not the company specifics, which is even more granular data there. So looking into this landscape, I think it's interesting how this is now evolving. So I think if you look into all the large vendors, they are all looking into how do I get more domain specific data to have a much better foundational model. GPT-5, I mean, we can read this everywhere. Everybody tried this, I guess. It's good, but it's not this, I would say, quantum leap everybody expected, right?
Yeah.
I would say Gemini is doing a pretty solid job moving forward, but still, it's not. If you really look into specifics, it does not really perform quite well. And I mean, look what Meta is doing right now, and now with Scale AI, just as an example. Why are they doing this? Why are they investing so much into this?
Yeah.
And I believe the differentiator is the data specifics. So all these big companies are right now looking into how do I now get the next 20%. So 80% they all have. So they have a lot of things in common. How do we get the next 20%, which is the biggest differentiator then going forward for enterprises? And this is now a race, I would say, which has just begun. And everybody's looking now into how to get into this, and that will be an interesting race, I would say.
Yeah, we've been doing quite a bit of work recently researching the data generation and labeling kind of landscape, and there's been quite a bit of consolidation kind of happening there. Like obviously you mentioned Scale, but a few other companies in the space there. So I think there's still a lot more activity coming in, the next few months, I'm sure, in that market. And in terms of kind of open source versus closed, do you think we will see a clear winner there, or will we get, both approaches surviving and finding different use cases?
And I mean, that's a very interesting question, because look into the details. What is really open source? So a question, is Llama really open source? I mean, let's define what does open source mean at the end, right? I don't want to go into the philosophy into this, right? But I think we have to look into what is really open source and what is just claiming open source and not really open source. At the end, I mean, I would say now we have to distinguish between regions. Look into Europe. Now we have the EU AI Act, which is in place. So if you have a big foundational model, you are set up to open source, let's say, at least with the training methodology, the training data, how was your LLM trained, and so on. Who is doing this really? I'm not aware that Meta is doing this. You at least are not allowed to use Llama 4 in Europe. I mean, there's a reason for this, right? Now, OpenAI open sourced at least one LLM. Again, the question is how open source is this really? Because they don't open source it really. And now, is this complying with EU AI Act? I'm not sure. I mean, the lawyers have to look into this. I don't believe that this is really. So what does this mean now for Europe versus I would say Asia and US? I think that's a big thing. And honestly, all these large, let's say, vendors, open sourcing, I mean, they are not doing this because they really want to contribute to the health of society. I mean, let's be realistic. There is a reason why they're doing this, because at the end, they're looking for the profit, however they get to this profit. So I would be very cautious on this. I mean, there are a lot of, I know in Germany, there are some initiatives trying to bring companies together and then really create an open source for example, manufacturing industry, LLMs, and so on. But until today, they did not succeed. So let's see how realistic this is. I think at the end, it really depends on how you use your own data, because this is a proprietary data, which is really the gold mine, I would say. So the question for enterprises is rather, do I need, let's say, LLMs which can do everything, or do I rather focus on small language models, which I fine-tune with my own proprietary data, which nobody else has, because this is what differentiates me to my competition. And this is something which I would rather look at. So to your question, how do I see the landscape? I'm cautious, to be honest. I don't believe that there's really a very strong model out there which is really, really open source, 100%, and not for profit after profit at the end. So I would be cautious on the open source landscape. I still believe there will always be someone who will open source some large language models. Look what Elon Musk just announced. I mean, there's a reason again why he's open sourcing, because he wants to make some, let's say, competition with his friends Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman. So I think the competition on that level will be somehow around the open source thing, right? If one starts it, the other have to do something at least. But I don't believe that it's again for the good of the whole society, but it's rather about them optimizing their profits.
Okay. And in terms of model performance, like you mentioned there, kind of, GPT-5 showing some signs of like the market kind of plateauing. I mean, it's difficult to make predictions here, but in your conversations with kind of R&D and people in the space, do you think we're going to see that plateau continue, or, we still early in the innings, like that there's going to be kind of, bigger leaps to come in the future?
Yeah, I think there will bigger leaps come up. The question is, will it be with the 100% same technology we are all looking at right now, or will there be changes in technology which will again change, let's say, the leak possibility, I would say, right? So just recently I read that NVIDIA is pushing a lot the small language models in the enterprises right now. I mean, so this might be a different way of looking into enterprise-specific use cases. So then maybe new possibilities will arise. Do you really need the big LLM, or you go into small ones at the end? What are possibilities of fine-tuning? How do we leverage your data? I mean, look into the valuation of Databricks. I mean, that's crazy. And there's a reason why they are evaluated in that dimension. Because again, data is the gold. This is really a time where data is gold. So looking into this, I believe, will be the big differentiator going forward.
Okay, and where do you see Europe's position in this kind of market at the moment? You know, moving forward, how do we position ourselves to compete with the US and China?
Well, I mean, there's always this debate of funding. So is Europe's funding in that area enough or not? I mean, you can read about this whole big data center. So it's somehow the counterpart to Stargate, what Europe is trying, the AI gigafactories, right? But the question here really is, do we have a problem when it comes to data centers right now, or do we have a problem to leverage technology in real business use cases? And again, just recently there was this MIT study which said basically 90% of the use cases are just failing, right? I mean, that's a big thing. That's a big number. And talking to a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and honestly, it doesn't even matter if it's Europe or US or even Asia. So we talked to a lot of these companies. The difference between them is the engagement level. I would say on the US side, because you daily are influenced by this whole AI topic, right? You try a lot of things out. That's more the culture of the US side. Fail fast. I just try something. It works. Perfect. If it does not work, no problem. Let's try the next. In Western Europe, it's more a little like, I don't want the black box. Show me the details first. Do a POC, do a POV, 6 months, and then maybe I will move on with this thing. But at that time, technology already changed. So that's another philosophy. So it really depends what you want to achieve at the end, and the pace you look into this. But I would say Europe has the biggest challenge that there are so many countries which have to work together. This alignment costs time and costs, I would say, energy. And with this, you will lose time. The AI game is a time game now. So it's really important to look into this. I would say the US is pushing a lot, and there's more funding definitely still, which is positive, And I would say the Asian market is interesting because at least in Europe you don't read too much about the Asian market, but I mean, they just look into what happened with DeepSeek, and there's a big difference, I would say, in particular if you look into China. China is thinking in decades, right? Based on the political environment they have, right? They don't think in periods of elections, but in Europe you have 26 countries thinking in periods of elections. In China they think about decades. What do we do in 50 years, in 100 years? Complete different way. So I think in Asia something big will pop up sooner or later. You see this with DeepSeek already. I think the US, Mr. Trump, you can think about him what you want, right? And I don't want to judge about Mr. Trump, but I think one thing what he's doing is he's at least treating his country like a business and pushing a lot. Again, might be good or worse, I don't know. And in Europe, you have these fragments, which makes it really difficult. So it's dangerous.
And in terms of kind of your experience of the last couple of years, when it comes to enterprise adoption of AI, you know, we mentioned that 95% number, obviously getting kind of a huge amount of press at the moment. But what have you seen work and not work? You know, what are the kind of factors which kind of influence that number, do you think?
Yeah, so I think first of all, I mean, there's Amara's law. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. So basically, it basically says humans overestimate at the beginning of a new technology what it can achieve and underestimate the long run on the impact. And that's exactly what happened with AI. So we overestimated with the first version of ChatGPT. Everybody thought the world will change. And this is true, the world will change, right? But I would say in the last 18 months, people still thought like it will change tomorrow already, right? So Matrix, Terminator, everything will happen, yeah, because AGI is not far away. I mean, I know I read an article 2 years ago already. AGI is not far away anymore, right? So this was our overestimation. Everything will be solved by this AI technology which we have now. So now we see it does not work as we expected this. Yeah. So now is a little bit, I would say, the aha moment, and this is the 95% failure rate. Yeah. Oh, it does not really work as I expected. Oh, it does not change the way how I can produce a car, for example, or it does not change the way in the financial services industries, and so on and so forth, right? So now people have to think about, where do I really look into this? So maybe, and that's again Amara's law, people will now say like, well, AI will change some stuff, but it's not really big impact. It will not have a big impact. So now comes the underestimation of the technology on the long run.
Yeah.
So that's why I said in 5 years, I believe we will get used to this, that it really has an impact. So that's why I believe we are not, the dip is over. Yeah, we are going down now. And the reason of the failure is has several sides, I would say. The one reason is, again, particularly in Western Europe and Germany, it's this: show me the black box. If I don't understand the black box, yeah, I'm not willing to really use this technology. Yeah, so that's a big issue, right? And having researchers who really know how a transformer architecture works, I mean, not every company has these people, right? So that's the one thing. The second thing is, people are afraid, or companies are afraid of using AI technology in the real core processes. And again, if you start to use, I know, like a chatbot for your customers on your website, just make a very simple example. And this is what a lot of companies try. Even in the US, you've read a lot about failures with the chatbot. Take this Chevrolet example. It was big in the press, where you could buy Chevrolet cars for $1 because someone prompt hijacked this system at the end.
Yeah.
So you have to rethink the way how you use this technology. Yeah, and companies are afraid. And if you use this now in your core processes, you even are more afraid. So you are a bit reluctant. So this is one reason. The second reason is that you have to think AI first and not just optimize something with AI. So if you have a poor process, as an example, if you have a poor process and just put AI into this poor process, then you have an AI-fied pure process. Is this a better process? No, it's not. So you have to rethink the process with AI. What does this mean? Do I even need this type of process, and so on and so forth? And this takes time. And that's why the reason why a lot of, I would say, consulting companies have a gold rush right now, because they now help companies to have AI governances. You have AI officers now in the company, and so on. So you have to rethink. You have to educate the people how to use AI, how to trust AI or not, how to have safety measures. So this takes time.
Yeah, that's kind of an industry in itself now, I guess, like that kind of introduction of architectural thinking, really, in terms of how you can make these projects successful.
Absolutely. So you have really to think about, I mean, on a very meta level, it's still just like a normal project. So you have to think about, what do I want to achieve? How do I measure success? How do I have safety measurements? How do I educate the people? I mean, you do this for every project usually, but somehow the people think with AI, because it understands humans, I don't have to do these things. But that's not true. I give you a very simple example where we had a lot of discussions with the customer. They said, I just want an system which summarizes specific files, PDF files. Sounds very easy. And I was, okay, how does success look like? Give me the success criteria, because only then I can measure if you really delivered the promise. And then I said, well, it should just summarize the PDF. I said, okay, what is a good summarization? Is it, I would say, a short length, the German style, short, concise, or do you want the US style, which is long, a lot of fluffy around and so on? What is it? Does it have to respond always in the same language, or can it even change the language? And so you can ask thousands of questions, but people don't think about this because they believe it understands me and should somehow summarize the text, but I don't know what success looks like. And these are typical topics in the projects which we saw, which cost time, and which, by the way, led to failure, because people started to do the project. Yes, the system did summarizations of your PDF, but the end users were not happy, because these success criteria never were evaluated. And that's why these things then failed. Yeah, and then people say, oh, the system does not work. But at the end, you never discuss what really the system should do in detail.
So it seems like the same problem that we ever had is like the customer defining the problem is like the big pinch point in the whole process.
Absolutely, and I just gave you a very easy example. Let me give you a more complex example. If you want to manufacture a car, right, and you have to think about the engine. I mean, there are so many questions you have to ask, and you cannot just say, well, I hope that there is a chatbot which can just help me to build an engine, the new V8 engine of whatever car, right? It does not work this way, right? So again, it's not about replacing the engineer who has the expertise. It's rather about helping the engineer to think about things which maybe he or she does not consider right now. These are different ways of engineering, for example, an engine, right? So you have to rethink the process. That's what I meant with the process. You cannot just put AI on top of the process you have already. This is not the way how it will work.
And if we think about your experience over the last few years of building a company, like are there kind of key differences, do you think, in building like a deep tech company versus a more typical sort of enterprise SaaS company?
Yes and no. I mean, in all companies, you need, I would say, the experts for the domain, right? So you still need great recruiters so that you get the best talents of the world, right? You need great salespeople that you can position this. In particular, if you are a sales-led, let's say, company, depending on the product you have. If you're product-led, maybe you need less the salespeople. You need great product people, and you need the people who are able to convert the research into product and the product into business value. Right? So, and that's I would say it's a big difference between deep tech and classical enterprise SaaS. In a deep tech, you have really to come from the research side, and from the research side to the product. So what do you research on? Right? And researchers, when I talk to our researchers, sometimes they even told me like, I don't know what the result will be. I'm doing research, right? So it's right, not something you can predict, right? So I'm doing research. I cannot predict this. But what you can do at least is in which area do you research, right? What are you trying to solve, and what's the way you're trying to solve, as an example, right? So that's the big difference. But then from the research to the product side, when you have this, then I would say it goes the classical enterprise SaaS way. On the product side, you need the people who build the product, which is enterprise grade ready, right? Which you can scale. You need to educate the people. You need to understand the user, the behavior, the pain point you want to solve, and so on. And then you need the salespeople who can really position this in a way. And that's a big thing again. Even in the AI world, it's even more complex. You need to translate technology to business value. I see still a lot of people around there saying like, well, I have now an AI grade chatbot which costs you only X, Y, Z, right? I mean, that's not the way how you pitch it. What do you solve really? What is the problem you're tackling right now? Don't talk about tech with business people, right? Talk about business with the business people. Talk tech with the tech people, and that's a big thing.
And in your career, like you've worked across strategy, channel, go-to-market, like where do you see the biggest difference in terms of traditional SaaS and AI in those different areas? Like, are you having to adapt more in certain areas than others?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the world, I've never seen a world which is changing so fast. I mean, it's honestly so tough to keep up. Like what's going on in the AI world right now? Every day you read news on something, new technology, new launch, even new company. But I mean, I would say now you can build your own startup within 1 hour. It's so easy. Everybody's talking about AI agents. Again, big debate about AI agents, whatever they really mean. But basically, you can really build a one-man show, have hundreds of agents, and trying to do everything yourself. This was not possible 5 years ago. Not in that way, at least, right? And that's huge. What does this mean for existing companies? This means you are getting more and more competition, and that's exactly what's happening now. So if you suddenly just take, I don't know, something like Lovable, right? I mean, you can basically build your application in 1 hour. So now it's like, I just rebuilt, I don't know, another ERP solution with Lovable in 1 day, right? Yes, it's not so perfect, but it still works and it solves some problems, right? So you can really do something like this right now, and that's really crazy. So this means what you have to do is, how do you differentiate now as a company? So you have really to rethink, how do you differentiate? If everybody is able to build and start up and to rebuild your own application, what you have, how do you sustainably differentiate? So then maybe it's the way how you engage. So how do you build a community around your product, around your company, your brand? If you're in the sales-led motion, in particular on the enterprise side, it's the way you engage with your customers, right? So you cannot just let AI call your C-level. It does not work. I don't believe in this. So it's not in particular in the complex enterprise world. So it's about this emotional side, what I meant at the beginning, right? If you're doing this in a great way, then this is how you can differentiate. And now comes the interesting piece. I turn this around. You can leverage, even on the go-to-market side, AI technology to master the way you engage with your customers. So now it's so easy to prep for every single meeting, even if you have 10 meetings a day. It's so easy. I can even analyze the way you behave based on, I know, your social media posts and so on, and turn my pitch into a way which I believe works for you. I mean, that's unique. You in the history, you could not do this unless you have 20 years of sales experience and you had this feeling how someone works. Now you can even use AI to leverage it. You can prepare much better. You can be much faster in response time, right? I mean, these are things you can leverage on the go-to-market side with the help of AI technology. But I don't believe that you can be replaced in this world.
And you mentioned a little bit earlier, one of the things that you were having to learn and kind of think about in kind of building a new company was like pricing and monetization, with a market that's kind of maturing, but also still changing so rapidly. Like, how do you think about pricing, for a new company coming into the market today, for example?
That's a very interesting debate to have. So I would say it depends at the end on your product or service you want to offer. But what I saw, what does not work really well, is a tech-based pricing for a business problem solution. What do I mean with this? I mean, the world started with tokens. I mean, it was about tokens. I had so many conversations with CFOs who, at the end, they have to sign off contracts, right? And they said, I just don't understand tokens. Because I cannot predict it. I cannot predict it. I cannot stand it, right? I cannot price this. So that's difficult. So now I would say the big tech companies have a big advantage. Take the Microsoft of this world. They have multi-million large contracts with the enterprises, right? So there you can somehow build this in and say like it's a flat rate or somehow a flat rate and so on. So there are commercial, I would say, optimizations, how you can leverage this as a big tech. But if you're a startup or a scale-up and you're building something new, in particular, if you have a product which tackles a business solution, right, you need to really think about the price, which, by the way, can be a differentiator for you. So what the business units are looking for is ideally an outcome-based pricing. Right. So if I get, I don't know, X% more sales based on your solution, then I can really count on this, and then I'm willing to pay a price of this, right? But if you tell me you have to pay me per token, and I don't know how much sales will increase for you, so there's no direct relation to this, it's for me really tough to sell this. And again, if you have to talk the same language. If I'm talking with you as a recruiter, right, and I start to talk with you now, you're into the tech, but just as an example, if I would start to tell you I have the best recruiting software and you pay by tokens, as an example, or by API calls or by whatever, you would tell me, Ramin, I am a recruiter. I'm focusing on recruiting the best talent of the world. Tell me how this helps me and how I can price it based on my outcome. And this is a big thing where I believe people have to rethink the way how pricing works.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it sounds like quite an interesting opportunity for someone who can kind of come in and solve that problem.
Yes, absolutely.
And like for any kind of startup coming into this space, like how do you think you balance like that longer term, maybe research driven vision with the kind of shorter term commercial pressure of any startup?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a typical, I would say, investor VC PE type of game, right? What is the burn rate and how much time do you have, and so on and so forth. So I would say at the end, it's really important that you first have a product which somehow long-term differentiates you, and that's again what I meant at the beginning. So if I would invest now in a startup, I would always ask the question: are you using just a foundational model, putting a simple UI on top of this and trying to sell this as a product? I'm just exaggerating a little bit, right? Then I don't believe that's a sustainable business model. And here's the reason why: because if the next version of a foundational model has exactly the capabilities, I can just rebuild it. Or if I can go to Lovable and just rebuild exactly your application and your UI and so on and so forth, right? Easily in 1 or 2 days, why should I buy from you? So how do you differentiate? This is always the question I would ask. And also on the other side around, if I would do a research product type of startup, I would always ask, what differentiates us and what will in the future differentiate us if we assume that the foundation models are getting better and better and better. So why should someone pay for us, for our product? So that's the first thing. And by the way, that's not only in the AI world, it's always you should ask this, but now it's getting even tougher because again, the threshold of rebuilding something is quite lowered right now. So that's the one question. The second question is, what is the user journey of the product you're selling? Right. So again, taking you as a recruiter as an example, if you're telling me you're using already a recruiting software, take SuccessFactors or Workday or whatever, right? And I'm coming now as a startup, telling my recruiting software is so much better, and it's just takes one specific piece of your recruiting workflow, but you have to jump into my solution. What will you say? You will say, I'm using everything in my recruiting software. Now I have to jump for one specific piece to your software. Then it's either really an outstanding product, it has a big niche, or you will ask, can you integrate this into my real, let's say, end-to-end process? So you have to think about with who do you partner, right? So do you want to be at the front line and then suddenly I would compete against Workday or SuccessFactors and so on, staying in my example? Or do I rather try to collaborate with these companies? They're like, okay, I rather contribute to one piece, but within their environment because they have the touch points to the real business users. That's a big question to ask. But again, competing now with the big landscape of Microsoft and Google and Workday and Salesforce and so on, who have the power of the end user already on their platform, this is a big question to ask.
And last question, I mean, what's next for you? Are you going to build your own company later this morning in an hour? Or, have you got other kind of plans? I mean, you don't have to go into details if you can't share, but just kind of interested, what's the next journey for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I will definitely stay with what I really can do greatly, and this is go to market. I will be in the space where I will help companies to transform and help companies to leverage technology for business contribution, and I will stay in the go-to-market place. And in approximately 4 weeks, I will also share publicly where I will be.
Okay, well, we'll look out for that announcement when it comes. So thanks for your time today, Ramin, and thank you to everybody watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of AI People coming soon.